Okay, this is chapter 50 of The Night Singer. 50. A sense of failure followed Hannah as she got in behind the wheel. She should have done more to stop the raid on Fanny's house. Given the consequences it could have on the girl, it was far too early, particularly now that the investigation had taken another turn. Hannah still hadn't dropped the idea that there might be a link between Fanny and Axel Stanston, but right now she was convinced that Marcus Johansson was the lead they should be chasing down. "Idiots," she muttered as she saw the headlines outside a newsstand. Axel Stanston in custody. She hated it when suspects were hung out to dry like that, especially when they had already been released. The press was always one step behind. Yesterday afternoon, while their headlines were focused on Axel's grief, he had been in custody. She wondered what they would write tomorrow. Axel would no doubt turn things in his favor. In fact, that was probably one of the reasons he hadn't immediately given them his alibi. In the passenger seat beside her, Eric was on his phone, first with Sapria and then the caretaker of the building where Marcus Johansson lived. "There's no code," he said. "The door should be open." Hannah parked up on Drottning Christvåg outside a building with glazed red-framed balconies. They walked around the corner and entered through the first door. The lower half of the walls were painted dusty pink, and there were two birds painted in the same shade on the white upper section. The building didn't have an elevator, so they took the stairs to the third floor and rang the buzzer. Marcus Johansson answered in a pair of chinos and a white t-shirt, barefoot. Though he was only around 5'7", there was something about his body that made him seem gangly. Hannah thought he looked vaguely familiar, but she couldn't place him. They identified themselves as officers, holding up their badges, and he welcomed them in, showing them through to the kitchen. "Have we met before?" asked Hannah. Marcus studied her for a moment or two before shaking his head. "We want to talk to you about Joel Forslund," said Eric. "Yes, I thought you might." They had found the right Marcus, but Hannah didn't feel any sense of relief. She was still trying to work out where she could have seen him before. Was it before she had left the island? He was 8 years older than her, so she doubted it. "Were the two of you in a relationship?" Eric's question was too blunt and to the point for Hannah. She would have preferred to begin with a more open-ended question, giving them a chance to hear Marcus talk about who Joel was. She glanced over at Eric, trying to tell him to calm down, but he didn't meet her eye. Maybe he didn't think they had time. Yet again, Marcus didn't seem surprised by their question. "No, absolutely not. Joel wasn't doing particularly well, and I wanted to support him." "Where did the two of you meet?" "In an online forum." "An LGBTQ forum, correct?" "Yes." Hannah had no choice but to let Eric continue. She peered around the room. The only objects on the countertop were a fruit bowl and a pot of utensils. There were no curtains in the window and just one solitary green plant on the windowsill. The table they were sitting at was painted white, the chairs too. She was struggling to make sense of both Marcus and the room. The older men rarely made contact with young boys online purely to support them. "How would you define your sexual orientation?" Marcus sighed, possibly at the roundabout way Eric had asked the question. "I'm married to a woman," he said. "So, what do you think?" "Where's your wife?" "We've chosen to live apart. She has her own apartment nearby." "Why?" "Because when we lived together, we got on one another's nerves far too much. We both have a great need for time alone." Hannah had never lived with a partner, and it bothered her that she hadn't been brave enough to move in with Fabian, more because of her cowardice than anything. She might never get the chance again to try out a life where she wasn't alone. But somehow, deep down, she also knew that it would never have worked in the long run, no matter how she felt about him. He had wanted too much for everything to happen now. They had only been together 3 months when he suggested she moved in. Eric turned to Hannah, likely irritated by her silence. She ignored him and focused on Marcus. "Did Joel have feelings for you?" she asked. "No," said Marcus. "I would have noticed if he had." His answer was too quick, too certain, as though all he wanted was to get rid of them. Hannah tried to find another way in. "Why was Joel struggling?" "Being a teenager isn't easy." "No, but it was more than that for him, wasn't it?" Marcus gave a resigned shrug. What happened to Joel is awful, but we only knew each other for a few months. I can't tell you any more than I already have. Sorry, my dog just wanted to say hi and she scared me. What did the two of you talk about? Hannah asked. Books, TV shows, documentaries, but mostly about how hard it is to find your place in the world, about how it shouldn't matter who you love or what you identify as. His answers were still irritatingly vague, so Hannah tried a different angle. How is your relationship with your son? What does that have to do with anything? Just answer the question, said Eric. It's been difficult, said Marcus, but things are getting better. Why is he at school in Gothenburg? It's a hockey school. Marcus seemed to change as he talked about his son. His face was telling a different story than his mouth, saying that things hadn't improved at all, and Hannah spotted an opening to cling onto. Is your son the reason you joined the forum? She asked. To an extent. Go on. I've always struggled to talk to him, but it's easier with others. I really feel like I can help them. Is your son gay? She continued. No, or at least not as far as I know. So why an LGBTQ forum? I used to work for a support line for people considering suicide. Where were you between Tuesday night and early Wednesday morning? Asked Eric, who seemed to have grown weary of Marcus's evasive answers. I was here, asleep. I went to bed early, around 10. Is there anyone who can confirm that? No, I spoke to my wife on the phone, but that was just after 9. When were you last on Oland? A few weeks ago. I went to see a friend in Farsten. Hannah and Eric left Marcus Johansson, telling him to get in touch if he remembered anything else they should know about Joel. Do you have Marcus Johansson's registration number? Asked Hannah. When Joel shook his head, she called a colleague and asked them to check. They were walking toward the building's parking lot and quickly found the black Audi with the right plates. Hannah got the same feeling she had when she saw Johansson for the first time, that she had seen it before. The left side mirror was broken, and there was a long scratch down one side of the car. She peered in through the windshield. The car's interior was much tidier than her own. Not a single thing visible, not even any scrap of paper. She also thought she could make out the smell of cleaning products. What do you think? Asked Hannah. It looks like someone's angry with him.